Okay, we should be all set and going now. I'm starting early today. Why are you starting early today, Chris? It's almost like I'm cheating. Cheating on my start time. My whole title for today is Don't Be Kept from Creativity and Self-Expression and Learn Cheat Codes. What does that mean? It means I'm going to say stupid things. Okay, so cheat codes is, what I mean by this is, we live in an age where the encouragement of people developing creative expression is almost anathema to modern society. And what I mean by that is that there is so much encouragement institutionally in academia. There's so much encouragement institutionally in outcome. The outcome of whatever your education is entirely for the procurement of wealth, and there's so much encouragement into systems that are bottlenecked, and they get more and more bottlenecked as applied. So what I mean by that is, hey, you've got athletic prowess, you should go be an athlete. Well, that sounds well and good, except for the fact that athletics is a very bottlenecked industry where in order for you to be the guy at the NFL or the NHL for football and or North American football and sports, and hockey, these two different sports, the amount of people that are successful out of that, from the amount of people that have the interest in that, is so incredibly small that why do we put so much emphasis and encouragement on this idea of success in that industry? I don't think it's fair. Just April says, "Hey, I made it to alive! Yay! Hey, April, how you doing?" And Linda says, "Hi, Christopher. Hi, Linda. How you doing? Hiya, Tim." So what I'm saying is, the more that institutionally or societally we push and promote things, the less and less opportunities that are presented for people at a higher and higher success rate. You want to be, the big business CEO, corporate raider. There's less and less ability for success in that when there are so many factors that relegate towards those people climbing to the top of that that business empire world. It's the same thing for writing and illustrating comic books. We're going to use comic books as the example since I talk about sequential art all the time. These people that spend all of this time writing and illustrating, or more primarily illustrating, let's just say that, all these stories about these mainstream North American superhero companies, the amount of those people that actually get to work in said industry are incredibly small amount, and the amount of those individuals that get to apply themselves in that said industry, specifically in those companies, is a very, very small club. It's not to say it's you can't get into it. It's not to say that it's got closed doors. I'm not going to speak anything political like that. But what I'm going to say is that it's you want to draw Batman comics. It's a very small list of people that draw those things. Even though there's ridiculous amounts of those books coming out, and that's a challenge, right? Educationally, we promote academia. We promote the basics of education that are required. You sit down. Corbin's back, everybody. Good heavens. Ridiculous. Anyways, my cat is noisy. So, in education, in school, we talk at a primary level about creative expression, creativity, and there's a nominal amount of it as you go higher and higher in education, and less encouragement of it, and less furthering the development of it for people. And it, oh, for heaven's sakes. Hi, everybody. My name is Corbin. I am a cat. Well, what do you want then? Just stop yelling at me. Linda says hi. Anyhow. Oh, so does April. Are you happy now? 50 toys in this room. You can't play with any of them. You just have to sit here and yell at me. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that, but we have to look at the original course of the education system, and that is basic education for people in order for them to be, honestly, to be sufficient laborers. You know, because common education really kicked into place during the industrial. April says he's a good kitty boy saying hello. Yeah, I guess. So because of that, here's the basic things you need. Math, you need to be able to read, you need to be able to write, you need to be, just have the basic general knowledge is what they're really going for. And beyond that, there's less and less necessity for higher and higher educations unless you get into, different social stratus and societal systems and all that stuff. But generally, basic education for most people was just for them to be accommodated into society. That's just how it is, and so something happened, and to my understanding, it's the 1970s, where there's this shift in education that started going more and more into the higher education, really to become a self-fulfilling prophecy and to go over into more and more people continuing said education and then becoming educators themselves for a large part. And then these higher and higher amounts of money for the cost of people getting those educations became more and more of a disconnect for people that didn't have those accommodations to be included in said club. All these different factors that make me sound like a wackadoo right now. But the primary thing is, when I was a kid growing up and when I was going to school, the grade school that I went to had home ec classes for girls and boys, and shop classes for girls and boys, and primarily the shop class was mostly boys, and primarily the home ec class was mostly girls. Just I don't know why it was divided like that. You could choose which one you wanted to go in, and whatever reasons, the demographics tilted one way or to the other. There's no such thing as absolutism. It was, there's girls in the home ec, and with boys there as well, and then there's boys in the shop class with girls there as well. It's not like it's one gender over the other. But those opportunities were there. My grandkids go to that school. Those opportunities are no longer there, which is really unfortunate. That those things were outmoded, because this is leading me towards what I'm trying to get to about cheat codes. There are kids that learn. There's a person named Sir Ken Robinson. He unfortunately died during the lockdowns, and Ken was promoting the idea that we need a new kind of education system that is organic and focuses on different types of intelligence, because we have lots and lots of different intelligent aspects to personalities. April says, I was the only girl in shop. There's academic intelligence, and I'm not going to dismiss a single one of these, by the way. There's a technical aptitude or technical intelligence that people have. There's a vocational, hands-on aptitude that people have. There's communication intelligence that people have. There's creative intelligence that people have. I'm not sure if I'm missing any. Oh, there's athletic intelligence that people have, and then there's math and music. Sort of an understanding of systems, or it's hard to define specifically what it is, but there tends to be people that have some degree of accommodation into maths and sciences and music as well. So there's all these different kinds of intelligence, and our education system does not have the facility to focus on all of them because of whatever reasoning behind that, whether it's economics, whether it's politic, whether it's sociological, I don't know. But the way it was when I was a kid, which was a good few years ago, that there was encouragement in home ec, which it may well be called. I heard it. I think that's liberal arts or something like that, where it's more about the vocational aspect of hands-on and homemaking and cooking and all kinds of hairdressing things, all these different sort of things that unfortunately are looked down or as less of. And then the home ec part would apply itself to the vocational aptitudes that lead towards technical skills and things like that. April says that she doesn't have the last three. But the point is that nobody has all of them. Even if you have some sort of tendencies to be some kind of polymath where you have proficiencies in all these different ways, nobody has all those skills. But at the same time, we don't have a system that encourages all those skills. We have a system that puts way too much emphasis on the academia aspect, and there's so many people that are just sort of thrown out of the system because they don't follow in accordance to that type of modality. And I find that really unfortunate. And so there's interesting ways that we can change that, I think, but something drastic has to happen to a system right now in order to encourage that. And again, this isn't dismissing teachers. Teachers do their best with the system they're in. This is about the system in and of itself, and to some extent the bureaucratic aspect of it as well. But there are a great deal of teachers that do their extracurricular endeavors and try to support the athletic kids, and there are a great deal of teachers that you spend some time with the emotional intelligence. That's the other one. With helping young people develop despite the challenges of living in the world today. There are so many different ways that teachers try to help out and put in extra time, but they're still working in a system that is relegated, kind of deterministic towards a certain kind of course. And so instead of really fostering and encouraging the idea of the arts education in most schools, in London here, we have a school of art for elementary kids. That's, and then we have, I went to school here in London called Beale Art, which had an enriched program for art at Beale Art at the technical school. It was a technical school, that makes sense. It also had a big shop program, electronics program, electricity program, automotive programs, there was hairdressing programs, there were all kinds of additional things. London had a system where we had the technical school, we had an academic focused school at Central, we had a vocational school at a school called Thames here in London, which were kids that really hands first, books second. And then we had a remedial school for the kids that we were trying to figure out how to help them out and to help them find and fit their place in the world. Those Beale's still there, Central's still there, but right, this homogenization of things or special development of things is what's happened in the school system. So used to be that you'd have all these there's some degree of encouragement of teachers to spend extra time doing sports and things like that. I don't know where that stands these days because none of my grandkids are in high school yet, but it's just strange to me. So Sir Ken Robinson thought we needed some sort of more organic system where we can break that system and institute some cheat codes where we realize these kids are vocationally apt, more apt to do things. So London ideally should get that system back. And how do we encourage those kids? Because they're going to fit and survive and thrive in society if they're just given the encouragement and the aptitudinal adaptation into the system you're good with your hands. Do you like cars? Let's teach you all about cars. And they're doing cars. They're fixing cars, repairing cars, designing cars, making cars. System. The overall societal system benefits from that. Or you have an aptitude that maybe you like mopping the floor, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying anything about people that have custodial abilities, but I'm saying that there's people aptitudinally that they would find enrichment from that job for their lifestyle. And there are people that they're wired differently so that they look at things in more of a creative bent. And here's basic art, right? That's basic art is covered, but if there's at some point in time where we can aptitudinally assess kids, and I don't know, is it a Breyer-Miggs test or whatever it's called? There's all these different tests that they can do so they can see what your aptitudinal alignment is. That's great, but that doesn't necessarily do everything that it could do for putting those kids down the right course of direction. Because the system has a challenge with it. And it's not to say the system doesn't try, it just has a big challenge with it. So, but there's a funny, somebody reminded me of a song recently. And it's Tom Petty's "Even the Losers Get Lucky Sometimes." The song's called Even the Losers. But the idea is that with "Even the Losers Get Lucky Sometimes" is that the song is about a guy who's trying to win over the affection of a girl, and she's way out of his league, and he's a loser, and but for some reason tonight's just right. Let me show you the stars. I know about stars, and they end up having a smooch. So even the loser gets lucky sometimes. But it's the same case where if we can just figure out a system where we can figure out how to take those kids that are unfortunately being tossed out systemically throughout society, as being a loser in this system that we have, and figure out ways to encourage the development of that would be fantastic. And I think the way to do that is with things like cheat codes. And that goes for neurotypical and neural atypical kids as well. There's a big challenge of it wasn't until later in life that I really came to an understanding that I have ADHD brain. And there are probably ways that we could have focused my head a little more into having some larger facility for whatever measure of success societally. And yet at the same time, I got no complaints and I'm happy, and I find that my life is successful in ways that I never could have expected, and I'm very happy and pleased and love all the kids and my wife and everything else and what I do. But maybe if there had been some easier understanding of that, then I could have done whatever. Well, so because of that, I'm one of these people that's like, I got proficiencies in a whole bunch of things, but I don't have mastery in any of them. But Eric Weinstein, let me tell you about Eric Weinstein. He's a brilliant thinker. He's a mathematician, I think it is. He says disabilities are gifts, and that we just need to find alternate ways to educate those people that have disabilities, societal, whatever the things that make them be asserted as losers. It was Eric Weinstein, now that I think about it, that really likes the Tom Petty song. That's where I heard about that. But I found out a really cool hold on. Here. I found a really cool cheat from Eric Weinstein. Okay. Guitar. All right. People look at the guitar and go, I can play, or I can't play guitar. I can never play guitar. I can never learn how to play guitar. it's kind of one of those either or things, and there are some people that have a fantastic development of skill with developing the ability to play the guitar. But here's the secret trick: on the neck of your guitar are all of these frets. Okay, and if you leave the second, if you play only the second, the third, and the fourth string, there's six. Second, third, and fourth string from the top. Okay, and you just play those three open. That's an open chord. Now, there's so many songs in music that are really used with basically 4 chords. And you can play those 4 chords with the second, third, and fourth string open along the 5th fret. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 7th fret, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the 12th fret, da 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 da. 12. Now there's marks on the side of the neck of most guitars, if that makes it easier. But if you just play those, you can start to find, it's just a matter of adjusting the rhythmic pattern and the specific annotation of those 3 strings that will let you play most of the songs on the radio. So that's a cheat. That's a cheat code. And if you have a guitar, try it out. Open 5, 7, 12. Okay? Corbin is gone. He hates the guitar. But that's a cheat code. And that's a cheat code that encourages creativity and self-expression. I like music. I love rock and roll. I'd love to be able to play along with it, but I can't learn guitar. Open 5, 7, 12. The strings are 2, 3, and 4 from the top. That's the sort of thing about a cheat code. Oh yeah, I've got today's page up for the latest of the story. Here's, I'm going to switch the camera. Here's a thing I'm telling kids all the time. And that's this. If you look at, and here's another cheat. If you look at a square, give me a second. Where have I put things? It doesn't matter. Anyways, if you look at a square, a circle, and a triangle, or a circle, a square, and a triangle in this case, okay, and you look at these 3, move this over, these 3 shapes, okay, and you look around wherever you might be that you're tuned into this. April says, I have no rhythm. You might be surprised. Give it a try. But if you look at those 3 shapes and you look around wherever you are right now, whatever the environment is that you might be engaged in this, you can generally break down most things that you see into those 3 shapes and variations therein. And so you know, circle, square, triangle is really an easy way to start. I've talked about this before, but once you get more complexity to it and add dimension to it, then they become a sphere, a cube, and a pyramid, and then you start getting in. So your circle, square, triangle, you know, it becomes, there's your square shape, there's your pyramid shape, you know, here's your sphere with your shadow to the one side. Anyways, so then when you start getting more complex than that, you can take some of these shapes and you can turn circles into an ellipses, right? Your squares start to become rectangles, right? And you can round your pyramid shapes to points, you know, to soften in those shapes and blending the idea of a circle and a pyramid together and having round shapes. Point is that you can get more and more complex shapes, and then you can start connecting those things together, and so you can start getting cylinders, which is basically, you know, circle, oval, ellipses, and add it to a rectangle. It just, point is, with that you can draw more and more, you can utilize more and more complex shapes as you go into drawing things. And so that when you start looking at objects, and I've talked about this before, you can look at a car and start breaking a car down into all these shapes. And so here, I'll use this pencil. So you got the headlights on the front of a car, okay, and you've often got the spotlight, and you've got the signal lights that are underneath. If you look at, so I'm going to use pencil like this because I'm going to throw a whole bunch of shapes together really quickly. All right, and so when you start, am I in frame? Yeah. So when you start putting together all of these shapes, and you realize that cars are just built out of shapes, then you can really mess around with the idea of, how do I go about drawing a car? I just start breaking it down into components or parts. So if I look at this, here's a cylinder for this part of the front of the car, and it moves up in a diagonal axis, or I can round off the front here. Hey, welcome back. He's such a grump today. And I can start breaking down the shapes of the car, so that the car, as more and more time goes by and I'm making more and more marks, the car, whoops, I should be doing that this way. What am I doing? Then the car starts developing more form. And then as we sit down here and we look at the shape of the car and we look at how it fits into whatever the context that we're putting it in, and then we start putting more and more of these little shapes together, then we start getting something that's more recognizable as a possibly real car. And you just start thinking about all the car parts and how those all work together. And before you know it, you're drawing a complete car. Right? And so pretty much anything that we think of, we can break up into these different shapes. And we can start to understand how to codify ways in order to interpret visual reality. So we can figure out how to utilize shapes in order to do all the things that we need to do to develop up the image of said car. And as you go farther along, and you start applying things like perspective, and you start applying all these other foundational skills like the elements, art, principles of design, which I've talked about before here, before you know it, you're starting to figure out the cheat codes towards the easy foundational understanding of art. Art has all of these measures of complexity when you see it as a finished thing, but it really doesn't when you look at it from its beginning and look at it from the basics. Yesterday I talked about really simplifying how you go about the playing with story. How do I start to tell story? And I showed that you can do this complicated plot of overlapping elements as your starting point for storytelling, or you can look at story from a really basic means of Bob needs milk, looks in fridge, no milk. Bob goes to the store to get milk, whatever happens along the way, Bob gets to the store, holds up the thing of milk, Bob realizes he forgot his wallet. So you've got your context and your character, you've got the conflict, you've got the climax of that, and you've got a conclusion. And in this case, it's an open-ended conclusion because Bob has to go home and get his wallet so he can come back and have that milk. So that's a really basic story, and you can break those 4 parts down into a single page. You can break those 4 parts down. You can figure out as you get a little more sufficient with the idea of how to convey a story idea. You can utilize some of those things in a single image. Here's Bob standing beside Bill and looking all disappointed as Bill's passing Bob the wallet, and then Bill says, you got all the way to the store. You made it all the way to the store before you realized you didn't have your wallet on you to buy the milk. And Bill says, yeah, I gotta go back. So you've managed to convey those 4 points in a static image with some text. So it doesn't have to be this gigantic thing to tell a story. There's a really funny, I think it's a Far Side, where Doris, whatever the female character's name is, Doris is traveling through a forest, and she's got a vacuum beside her, and all she feels is this menacing sense of dread, and that it's almost like the forest is closing in on the path that she's dragging her vacuum through, and it's entirely because nature abhors a vacuum. Which is brilliant pun, but they've taken the visual aspect of an expression. Nature abhors a vacuum, which is about how if there's something that really isn't necessarily included in the larger body of an idea, then that can be problematic because that missing component throws everything else off. So nature abhors a vacuum. It tends to fill it in somehow, or it doesn't work. And yet in this case, it's a literal interpretation of the fact that the forest hates a vacuum being dragged through it, for carpets. So, but that's a it's a complex idea expressed in a single image. And I think that I can't remember their name at this point, but the person that created Farside had a fantastic affinity for telling larger ideas in a really simplified way, using a simplified codicy to sort of get across these ideas to people. And half of that is dependent upon you going, nature abhors a vacuum, right? So it's tricky. It's one of those things that, how do you make sense of a way to find your means to express those ideas? And I want to express myself creatively through song. Maybe that, open 5th, 7th, 12th open chord idea will help you out. Maybe that'll be of benefit to you. You're back again. You want me to get the guitar? Okay. So he's completely fed and everything. I want the attention. So and it's the same way with art and expression and stuff like that. And so if you look back in the lives that I've done, you'll see there'll be I put the image on the card for the video where I talk about elements and I talk about principles in art and design and there's just so many different measures and methods of taking these basic ideas and using those to find a way to express ourselves. Another thing you'll hear people say is that I can't figure out color, right? And so let's see if I can do the color wheel correctly. We've got there, and that should be there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. No, see, I did it wrong anyways. Oh well. So I can't figure out a color wheel. I've always sort of said the easiest way to do a color wheel is to figure out the primary colors, right? And then maybe I did do it right. I think I did do it right and then made a mess of it. And then to sit down with those only the three colors, and don't worry about all the other ones. You'll get those post-script, but oh no, I did it right. So you can figure out how to make a color wheel as soon as you can figure out how to put down yellow, red, and blue. And then the easiest way to do it is to take those three colors and put a measure of red, lightly put down here, and here. And then you've got a measure of yellow put down here and here, and here and here, and then a measure of blue put down in that light sort of application here and here. Now, this isn't perfect. These aren't crisp, beautiful and lovely colors. But then the second thing you do is you take that blue again and you put one more application beside the primary blue. You take that red again, you put one more application beside the primary red, and you take that yellow again and you put one more application beside the primary yellow. And that should give people a basic idea of color, a color wheel, so that when you know, and then you can of course use more and more refined colors, but the whole idea here is that you see how across from the yellow is purple, you see how across from the blue is orange, you see how across from the red is green. You got it. There's opposites, right? Or what's called complementary colors. And, you know, the colors that are beside the principal color are called tertiary colors. So you can want to do things in a color range. You look at, in this case for the blue, these guys. You want to do things with complementary colors. You look at the ones that are opposite from one another. You want to do things only using primaries. You got that. You know, so that's it. That's the color wheel in a nutshell. And yet, so some people say, oh, I don't know much about color. Well, there's not much more to know about it than that. And over time, you'll figure out ways for how those combinations work from different levels, like different means of application over time, that seem to make the most sense to you and seem to have the most pleasing result. So that's another cheat. It's another cheat code, is that really basic and simple application of how to apply a color wheel, you know. And so rather than finding ways and means to talk ourselves out of stuff, I highly encourage people finding ways and means to talk themselves, you know, into trying something, into trying a thing out. You know, if you can't draw shapes, there are all kinds of tools that will help you draw shapes that are pre-cut, pre-measured shapes. I showed you one earlier. This is a stencil that has all these different size circles in it, and a way and a means to short step the drawing of those circles so that they, you know, that looks there. Okay, it looks good. You don't have to sit there and go over and around the circle so many times until it's just right. It's there. It's already pre-cut. Well, you know, and then the same thing applies for ellipses. Okay, like there's stencils that do those as well. And so this would be a cheat code. And there's anybody that tells you that, well, that's cheating, they're wrong, right? I don't know how to draw a guy surfing. Look up a picture of a guy surfing, right? And when you sit down and look up picture of guy surfing, there's the basics that you need, you know, and do your best to try to emulate the structure of that drawing. Do you have to copy it perfectly? No. Is it easy at first if you try tracing it? Sure, why not? Whatever works for you. It's the whole point of your creative expression is you finding your means to the creative expression. And if tracing something works for you, then trace it. But if you try to draw it and at first it doesn't seem to be quite right, think about using these shapes. Think about how the leg is, you know, if you've got the guy's leg on the surfboard, you can draw his leg like this at first. This works. Oh, let me use something you can see easier. If you draw the leg to look like this at first, that works. There's your triangle. there's your cylindrical shape, right? There's a wider cylindrical shape coming into play, right? It steps down, but you're starting to figure out how to draw a shape, all these different shapes, and applying them into a foot, into a leg. And so your drawing of guy on surfboard, well, at first you might trace it, but then when you try to draw it yourself, it's like, it looks terrible. Okay, great. That's great, but you drew it. Right? Right, Corbin? So you've drawn it. You've made the application. You've made the try. And when you start implementing, things like this, well, then when you try to draw it the next time, well, it might look a little bit wonky as far as your aesthetic appreciation says. It doesn't look quite right. Well, the next time you do it might look a little better. And the next time it might look a little better. And then when you think about how do I draw a guy on a surfboard, then eventually, because you start to have this understanding of form, right, of how a person's formed, about how a surfboard, the shape of a surfboard is, how water, moves. When you sit down, you're at the beach one day, and just watch the waves. Watch how water moves. When you're watching a television show, let's say Hawaii Five-0, which is so out of date. Oh no, they remade it. Even that's out of date. So then you start to think about things of what are the quick ways that I can draw a guy on surfboard, and you start coming up with simplistic language that says, here's the guy on the surfboard, and you have his one leg. I don't know how to ride a surfboard. Let's start here. So he's got his one leg forward, he's got his other leg back and applied, and here's the surfboard beneath him, right? And he's catching a wave, and he's sitting on top of the world. I think that's how it goes. And then you've got the wave underneath him here, and there's the bubbles in the water, and there's the arc of said wave as it's moving up and through the ocean, and you're drawing guy on surfboard. So you start to be able to, as you get a greater and greater grasp and understanding of things, you start to be able to be less reliant on external images, and you start to be able to access your mind, and to close your eyes if you have to, and to try to visualize what does a guy on a surfboard look like. And you start to recollect all those things of watching television shows, or watching, behaviors and actions at the beach, or how the waves move at the beach. And all of these things take time, and all of these things take application to develop, but you're developing skills, whether it's, finding a means of creative expression like playing a guitar, or finding a means of creative expression like drawing a picture, or cutting hair, or whatever it might be. Just some sort of sense of, trimming flowers, or bonsai trees, or arranging things in your household, decorating in your household. All of these forms are the forms of creative expression, they're forms of creative outlet. But you get better and better at them with time, and you get better and better at them with repetition, and with furthering the understanding of that. Maybe I'm going to look at home decorating books and get I like how that is. I'm going to find a piece of beech wood and nail it to the wall. And then you've got a more refined decoration for your cottage. But these are skills, and skills have utility. And what that basically means is the development of skills and development of the ability to do those things enables you to more easily and more readily do those things. So whether or not, going back to my earlier point, whether or not systems of education, or access to education, or access to the learning of skills, or access to opportunities to develop yourself further have presented yourself to whatever level in your life, there's nothing to say that we can't attempt those things now. And there's nothing to say that you can't, you're I'm too old to learn. No such thing. There's no such thing. We're always learning. We're always in a state of growth and understanding. Even the greatly aged individual, who's I just had my 105th birthday, and that person sitting in a chair with some look of docility, their mind is still working, and they may not be vocalizing or anything like that anymore, but there's still a part of their mind that is still going over things and coming to an understanding of things and developing a deeper comprehension of maybe the situations in their lives that played out. We're always growing and we're always learning, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge in the world today where a society that doesn't necessarily encourage and reward general creativity and self-expression. It's always about pinnacle. It's always about all the value in art is in dead artists. These pieces are worth millions of dollars. Who cares? I'm kind of, if you can see it in a book, there's a part of me that doesn't care to own it on a wall. We live in an age where there's so many people that are trying new and interesting things and are exploring their own ideas. I'm far more minded to encourage those things than I am to see, a 65-year-old person drawing, their fan arts of Batman and Spider-Man. There's stories inside each of us to tell, and sometimes. But if they get fulfillment from that, if they get self-expression through that and creativity, I encourage that. Draw your Batmans and Spider-Mans until the cows come home. But I'm sure that there's a story inside there that, if they gave themselves a moment, draw yourself and dressed up as Batman, and then talk about the journey of your life and the entirety of the time you're dressed up in a Batman costume through all the ages of your life. How much more interesting is that than either just drawing Batman or drawing your life story? If you look at it through some sort of quirky lens where the entirety of my life I've been dressed as Batman, and somebody looks at you and says, "You're not dressed as Batman now." No, that's not the point. But it's a unique individual take, and I would sooner see people trying to interpret the world themselves and finding their own means of self-expression that aren't encumbered by facilitating some, corporate company character. Now, bear in mind that doesn't mean that that company putting out its books is. I'm not against those. I think that's great, and there's some fun stories that can be told with all of those things. But those people are hired to do it, and those people are, that's their job. You practice doing it a while. Try to apply to try to be the next person who does that for your job. Otherwise, maybe there's a means that by creating and following your own story that you can find another job. Ben Bishop, I got the opportunity to talk to Ben September, and Ben Bishop is drawing a book called The Last Ronin for Kevin Eastman, who is one of the co-creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is an 70s comic company, comic book series, Eastman and Peter Laird, and then it became a whole gigantic media thing with cartoons and movies and all kinds, and books and all kinds of stuff, and toys. But a recent series came out. Ben Bishop, drew a series called The Last Ronin, where it's about one of the turtles, the last of his group, that's out there trying to do his part in saving the world. Ben Bishop would do illustrations and covers, cover art of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books. It was something that he enjoyed, and he would send it to Kevin Eastman's company. And they said, good try, kid, work on this a little bit, work on that. But one day Kevin Eastman came across the solo book, the independent book, that Ben Bishop made himself. It has nothing to do with the company character or product. It's entirely Ben figured out how much money he needed to put aside so that he could spend 2 years of his life, I think it was 2 years, just working on his own book, and to produce that and then to publish it and put it out. And he did that, and a copy of it Kevin Eastman got a hold of and looked at it and went, this is fantastic. I wonder if this guy would be interested in drawing for us. And Ben Bishop gets a job drawing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Not because of drawing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but because of his ability to convey story that he had developed. Everybody can see you right here. Here, standing on the desk. Look at this. Standing right in the desk. Right in the frame. Look at you. So there are ways that we can find our path to the creative endeavor that we want, but it doesn't have to be through specific means. What I'm trying to say is that just by trying to find a way of self-expression that Ben did, he ended up doing something that he had always sort of aspired to do. So there's all kinds of different mechanisms that people can put in. That's a cheat code, by the way. That's completely a cheat code. Whether it was specifically applied or not, that's a cheat code. But there are all kinds of different endeavors that we can do in order to find our way to the thing that we'd like to do. I always wanted to, animate a cartoon. Okay, so what does it take to animate a cartoon? I'm not talking about me. I haven't had this impulse, but so what does it take to animate a cartoon? There's books on learning the basics of animation, that you can get from a library, or you can find at a used bookstore, or you can find basic lessons in this online on the interweb. The internet changes the game, folks. You don't have to have the money to afford a college education or a university education anymore. We have the internet, and there's enough things being shared openly, and there's enough expression of basics and how to develop skill sets on the internet, that you don't have to go through these further sometimes economically challenging means in order to get those skill sets for you to utilize to do the things that you want to do. There's all kinds of additional mechanisms that you can engage with. You can talk to people that do those things. You can go to the library. You can go on the internet. You can just sit down and apply yourself again and again and again. Just keep trying to draw everything you see with circles, squares, and triangles. And eventually it comes together. Eventually it happens. It might not happen immediately. It might not happen, snap my fingers and I'm the greatest artist. There are people that can, if you need to find further encouragement, I think Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers, and he's talking about the people that went their own means in order to be able to do the thing that they want to do, despite, people think that this is what's the way for things to be done, and this is the way that people think of how these things should go. And there's always outliers that think differently. There's always outliers that apply themselves different ways. There's there's tests that you can take in hi Susanna. There's tests that you can take for to surpass post-secondary education, that you can to take all the necessary requirements for education and learn all these things at home, whether it's by books, by videos, by whatever it is, and make all the according notes and learn all the basic fundamentals of these educations, and you can go and take the test for them. And there are places in North America that you can apply for the equivalency of this degree, or the equivalency of this education, the equivalency of your high school, without having to go to high school, without having to sit down and spend all the money in that classroom for 2-4 years, whatever it is. It's an awful lot of work. There's an awful lot of expectation, but that's a cheat code, and people have done it. It's challenging, but it's possible. So whatever the thing is that people want to do, and whatever the thing is that people want to learn about and want to apply in their own self-discovery, in their own journey, I firmly attest that there is a measure of possibility of that. If you want to learn climbing, you can learn climbing. Well, maybe you're not going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but there are ways for you to learn some degree of climbing. There's so many other factors to that, like your own physicality, the access to places to climb. Where I live is very flat. There's no mountains here. I would have to go hours in a car to find mountains, and but there's all kinds of alternative methods in order for me to go and learn climbing. Were I interested? I'm afraid of heights. I'm 5'18". That's a bad combination. Anyway, so my point is that you can go on that endeavor. When it comes to what I talk about here, and when it comes to how I go about doing what I do, whether it's live on a stream here or it's the things that I post on Instagram and Facebook and Patreon, where I post additional things to that. If anybody has any questions about anything, just ask me. By all means, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. And if there's ever anything in any way that I can help others, of course I'm here to do that. All of us are here to help and to share our ideas with others in this world to the best of our own ability or the best of our own comfort. So, there's a cheat code for you right there. Hey, Chris, what pencil do you use? And I go, HB. There we go. As absurd as that is. Because there's tools that I've discovered over time that I really enjoy using those for the things that I do. And that there's tools that I know others use that works for them. So it's learning about the tools that other people use can be a cheat code, because you're like, well, I know for a fact that a person is able to make specific lines with a specific kind of pencil. So if I utilize said pencil, I'm trying not to sneeze, then eventually, with application and development of skill, I'll be able to use said pencil in a similar way to make similar marks. Hey, buddy. But the other part I would suggest is allow yourself to recognize that you are an entirely unique individual. So you're not the same as whoever beside you. If you model yourself on the self-expression, the creativity that you would like to do, if you model it based on, I want to do that, and you point at the thing, right? Expect disappointment. And because while there are institutions, I showed a photo in the past of a gymnasium completely full of people drawing the same thing in China. And I think that there is somewhere upwards of 1,500, 2,000 people at easels in this gymnasium, drawing the same subject matter for their application to get into art school. You can do that, but it's challenging to do. And is it fulfilling? I don't know. And is it the thing that you want to do and want to be, the person who draws the same generic item that everyone else draws exactly the same way? For most people, no, it's not. But you see the thing and that you admire the creative form of self-expression. You love this poetry. You like the way that this person writes their books. You love the way that this person has been able to develop this enriched perspective as a journalist on the things that they're reporting on. You love this visual application. You love the way that somebody sings. We can learn to some extent how to do any of those things in order to utilize those things that we've learned to try to do it to the best of our ability. But it's not going to be the same. Because you have had experiences and you have a different physicality and you have a different mentality in your head from your own life, and all of those factors are going to come into play, so that when you're making marks, there's always going to be subjective differences. When you're expressing yourself, that's why it's called self-expression. When you talk to the person beside you, you're not saying the exact same words in the exact same way, because of all those other factors that make you who you are. And that's really important. And that's one of those things for us to encourage, right? So when it comes to all these different types of intelligence that I talked about earlier, and these different characteristic trait sets that people may have for comprehension, and how high you factor on those tests, they're not going to be the same as the person beside you. They're just not. And so there's an importance to accept that. I'm going to try to look something up here for a second. Okay, so I did a personality trait thing recently. And the basic key components are energy, mind, nature, tactics, and identity for the result of this test. And my identity is turbulent because it's 60% towards the turbulent as opposed to towards the assertive. My judging skills are 57% towards judging than it is to prospecting. My nature is 57% towards thinking than feeling. My energy is 51% extroverted as opposed to introverted. And then my intuition, as opposed to my observance, my intuition is 98%. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what that means, but I think I'm pretty centric and changeable, and I'll try this, I'll try that, I'm not feeling like it, I really think I should, but I tend to have a facility for leaning into going with it. And oftentimes here on the stream I've said, just trust your intuition and just listen to your intuition, and just, hey, I think I'll put a cow in this scene, and I have to apologize because I didn't realize that intuition might be a key component of what makes me who I am, that maybe everybody else doesn't have 98%, which is a scary number, by the way. 98% intuition as opposed to observance almost sounds like I don't pay attention to anything at all. So, so that's challenging. So for me, when I say listen to your intuition and lean into something, I don't, now that I've recognized this understanding, I don't want to just sort of take it for granted that everybody's the same. Everybody isn't the same. Everybody's different. But there's mechanisms that you can put into place in your life, those cheat codes that enable you to try to understand how to pursue the things that you want to pursue. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about writing here. I have gone through all of these different things over time where I've talked about different ways we can use mark-making tools to... Oh, Susanna says we all change with time. Oh, that's very important. That's very true. I've talked about this. I've talked about the elements of design. Let's get it in the frame. I've talked about the elements of design here. I've gone further into those things, like how to go from line to two-dimensional shape to imply three-dimensional form. That's what this is. Talking about color, talking about value, talking about texture, talking about space. So you can find talks about all of these different things. And then I took, and preceding to that, I think, I talked about principles. And the principles of design, which are balance, contrast, emphasis, movement, pattern, rhythm, and unity. So, and then I took both of those different things and I applied them together and talked about how you can use line with balance in order to put the images like this, and you can use color with patterns in order to make your images have this sort of application. So all of that stuff is accessible, and if you look back at some of the previous videos that I've done, I've already kind of given up those, if you want to look at those things as cheat codes, I've sort of already given those up. And I'm going to do some more. I'm going to continue on with that some more. I'm going to talk about expressions. I've already talked about composition stuff. I've already talked about what was yesterday about doing breakdowns in order to figure out how to tell a simple story. Just scribble some breakdowns on a piece of paper. Make a rectangular shape for yourself. You want to get the story to start here and to end up here. So you want to direct that eye, and however many layers that you need to get there of squares, so be it. Right? It's up to you. It's your story. If you want to do it in one, then do it in one. Have one static image and your text up here, and there's your punchline. And so all of those things are available, and you can do the same thing going sideways the way I do with the landscape stuff that I do a lot. It's the same application, it's just from here to here. We've talked about that before. So I am a big fan of everybody finding their own voice. I'm a big proponent of the idea that you yourself, at some point in time, have had the allowance, or can maybe allow yourself now, to try that thing that you want to do. My mother listened to a song when I was younger, and it was about a character at the age of 37. She realized she'd never been to Paris in a sports car with the warm wind in her hair. And it's about this person who has a sense of being unfulfilled. I can't remember the song, or it might have been Marie Bottrell or something like that. I can't remember. And I apologize for that if you're a big fan of whatever the song is, if you know what I'm talking about. But what that song sort of identifies is regret. And we live in times in the Western world here where more and more is a sense of isolation coming into play for a lot of people, and more is a sense of the inability to express oneself coming into play in the world that we live in. And those things can cause regret, and those things can cause a sense of loss and a lack of the ability to self-identify and to equip ourselves with the means to communicate to others. Whether it's talking, or if it's making pictures, creating visual images that, for yourself that you enjoy, but maybe that someone else may look upon and say, I like your picture. People do feel enriched and encouraged by that. There's nothing wrong with that. Is it necessarily your principal motivation, or should be your principal motivation? Maybe not, but at the same time, completely understandable. You're expressing yourself, and somebody else looks and goes, I like it. Awesome. Right? And if nobody else looks at it and says, I like it, it's still awesome. You look at it and you like it. You did it. There's somebody. That's, and that somebody is not, well, in accordance to what Susanna said earlier about we all change with time. The somebody that did that picture And the time they did that, let's say it's a year later and they look back at that picture, that's a different person at that point. You've had a year of experiences and a year maybe of development of yourself and maybe skill sets and creativity or whatever it is. But you look back at that picture that you did a year ago and you feel the way that you feel about it. Maybe you look at it and you still go, I like that. So no matter what, somebody got something out of it, even if it's just you. That's important. I always say that my favorite fan, the person that probably would think the highest of my work, may well be a young lady living in impoverished region in Indonesia, and randomly a piece of paper flits through the wind and lands at her feet, and she looks at it and she holds it up and goes, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen." In this, she levitates above the ground. She's so enlightened by it. Oh, and the entirety of history and mankind changes. No, maybe not. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And doing the things that you're doing are for your own sense of self-expression. So allow yourself that, and don't listen to people that look and go, that doesn't exactly look like a square. Okay. Sorry. Well, you don't need to worry about that. So whatever you can put into place, whatever you can figure out for cheat codes for your creative expression, try the guitar thing I showed you earlier. Was it April, I think, said, I don't have rhythm. And then April later on said, okay, I play in a mean air guitar. Excellent. That's exactly the stuff we're talking about. There's a proficiency, by the way, to emulating a fantastic guitar solo on air guitar that may well be more performative, a much better performance than if you'd actually played it on a guitar. It's still a sense of exaltation and performance. I love that. I don't play guitar, but I play a mean air guitar. That's great. Oh, I don't want to get the chords wrong with my air guitar. Who says that? So, yeah. So if there's anything that I can do for anybody that might tune in to any of these streams or has seen any of the posts that I put out on a regular basis, feel free to ask. If you have suggestions for ideas of, hey, Chris, do a story about what was I saying yesterday? Corbin, do you remember? Was it a fish as president? Something like that? A fish becomes president. Whatever random ideas that people suggest, I'm going to take them on. I'm going to try them out. Currently, right now, I'm doing this sci-fi story daily, and I'm page 10's going out today. I don't know how far I'm going with this, but I'm still doing one-page stuff on the side, and I'll have a whole bunch of different things to post, and I may well start posting those on Saturday, Sundays, just so people can see them. But in the last 2 years, it's over 700 one-page stories that I've done, and I'm just giving myself, because I don't have any other projects or jobs specifically at this moment, I'm doing this. Just allowing myself to play, to grow, to self-express a little bit for a moment, and to tell a little story, and to try to apply some of the things that I've learned, having to encapsulate X amount of story on a single page for the last 2 years, and how can that help me to improve my storytelling and weaving a larger narrative together. And so that's what I'm trying. So if you look back to the page that's just a star field with some red letters on it, on my posts on Instagram and Facebook, and that's your starting point, and then read each post that comes after that. That's and then there's 9 out there right now, and there'll be 10 by the end of today. That's the ongoing story. And I don't know if people like it or not or whatever. It's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I feel compelled to do so. So, and if there's something that comes from that, great. We are finishing off one page 2 to come out. There were some problems with the formatting, and as soon as we fix those things and figure it out, I will be letting people know and announcing that, so that it'll be the same size and shape as the last one that came out. And for those that might not be aware, this is the way that we put together one page, and this is on Amazon. And so the suggestion that people gave me, I wrote down the suggestion, I wrote a note about what my thoughts were in making a page, I show a little example of the original art for it, so I drew this in pencil, and then I colored it and did the text digitally. So there's the finished one. So, you know, yeah. So this, the one page, volume 1 is out, and all the different mediums that I use to do it, and all the different silly ideas. Like this is Christopher Walken goes for a drink. So this is actually Christopher Walken in The Shining instead of Jack Nicholson. You know, whatever. So, and so that's out there on Amazon. Susanna says, a vote for tuna fish. Vote for tuna fish and you'll get everything that exists. Tuna fish is your man. Okay, I'm going to write that down as an idea, Susanna, and put that in the book, because that's fantastic. A vote for tuna fish and you'll get, that's great, everything that exists. Tuna fish is your man. That's so good. That's a good campaign slogan. You should be in politics. No. That'd be great. That'd be so great. You know, a lot of people say to me, what's it like in your bowl? It's the best bowl. It's the perfect bowl. Anyways. What kind of water you drink? The best water. It's the forget it. I do a better impression of the American president because our Canadian president has no personality. Hey! Anyhow, so that's about it for me today. I just wanted to sort of express the idea of don't be kept from creativity. Don't be kept from finding means and ways to express yourself. There's so many accessible ways that you can find out the easier ways to try. And give them a go. If it's something that you've thought, oh, I'd like to dance, but you got a trick knee, right? Well, that doesn't mean you can't dance. It just means your dancing is going to be slightly different than Fred Astaire, but it's still dancing, you know. So we can try things. However they work out, they work out. But don't keep yourself from doing those things. Just give it a go. If it's terrible, if it's the worst thing you've ever seen, so what? Who's seen it? You? Good. You know, try it again. Maybe it's a little bit better. And I referred to things that you may well read that might encourage you, like Malcolm Gladwell's book, or listen to people like Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk, or there's so many things that you can check out. There's TED Talks. Malcolm Gladwell has a TED Talk about outliers. You know, so there's all kinds of things that can inspire you as well, right? There's master classes by writers. There's master classes by all kinds of creative individuals that may well tell you the thing that you're encouraged to do. I want to learn how to knit. I promise you there's videos of people saying, here are the basics of knitting. But allow yourself that. And if you feel like sharing it, I'd love to see it. Okay, that's it for me today, folks. I'll be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock as I regularly am. In the meantime, we'll try something. Have a great day. Bye for now. Bye from Corbin and I.